Hi everyone, welcome to today's live IELTS class. My name is Adrian and I'm broadcasting to you from Budapest, capital city of Hungary in Central Europe. All right, students, today let's take a look at an IELTS Task 1 formal letter for the general IELTS. Okay, let's have a look at that today. The materials, they come from our websites for general IELTS. Check us out at GIELTS help.com. And for academic IELTS, check us out at aehelp.com. Welcome, students, to the class. I see several of the regulars joining in. Always good to see you, Pachu, Aigul, some of our members from our other channels. Hi, Diego. Hope everybody's having a great weekend so far, a beautiful Saturday. All right, students, quick peek at our websites. They look like this. This is our general IELTS website here with the green background. You can click that big red button. Join. You have a My Student account with lots of goodies, 6 original practice exams, over 100 hours of video lessons, and a fully interactive course for your tablet, phone, PC. Academic IELTS looks like this with the blue background. You can click that big red button right beside our IELTS hero and join there. Hi, Kyber. Hi, Devilton, Becca. Great name. All right. Let's get into today's questions. So, today, this is our last class for this week. The next General IELTS class will be continuing on Wednesday. And if you have a question for me, you can always email me, Adrian at GIELTShelp.com. We'll be working on a new speaking sample video for you over the weekend. And then we'll be back on Wednesday with some speaking part 2 and 3 practice and strategy. So here we go. Let's take a look at today's question. Writing task 1, you should spend about 20 minutes on this task, okay? You need to request a coworker to cover your shift at your job because of an unexpected emergency. Well, that tends to happen in life to most of us at some point. Not very pleasant sometimes, but hey, it could be something positive like somebody having a baby, right? All right, and then it says, describe your situation, explain what they need to do in your absence, and tell them what you can do in return. Let's stick that missing pronoun in there. Tell them what you can do in return, and then write at least 150 words. That means minimum 150 words. Okay, that's what you need to do. So clearly this is a formal letter. How do we know it's a formal letter? Well, you're asking a colleague, a coworker, to do a favor for you. So clearly that's a formal letter, okay? Formal letters when you're writing to your boss, you're writing to your coworker, you're writing to your business partner, you're writing to the police, to a hotel manager. Those letters usually are formal letters. Now, a good question before we start here, students, is what's the difference between a formal letter and an informal letter? Okay, so all right, that's a good question to start off with. Can anybody tell me some information? Can we take some notes on this, and then I'll let you know if you're on the right track, what you're missing. I'll give you some hints as well, but let's see what you know about formal versus informal speech or writing in the English language. It's not as clear as in some languages. In Japanese, you use completely different words and grammar, but in English, it's not as clear, but there are differences. So what is the difference between formal versus informal? So the salutation, the title could be a little bit different, sure. Let's not mix semi-formal, Yvonne, in here. Let's just keep them clearly formal and informal. There's no point to go semi-formal. Let's go one or the other. Not quite like dress code here. Sure. So I don't think you're quite getting what I'm asking you. What is the actual difference in language use? So you're telling me when a letter is formal or when it's informal, but what is the difference in the language use? So Rekha, you're saying the language. What do you mean? Okay. So Allah says, well, the way you pick the words. Okay, but what do you mean by that? So what do we use in a formal letter? What do we avoid in a formal letter versus an informal letter? So give me some information on that. Okay. Not who we're writing to, but what we're actually doing. I'll give you a hint. So for example, in formal letters, do not use contractions. Hopefully everybody knows what contractions are, like don't. Okay, that's informal. So in academic and business writing, we don't use contractions like do not or, we don't use contractions like don't or I'm. We write it out. So in formal letters, we don't use contractions like don't. Instead, we write out the words. Okay, so for example, do not, I am, they have, instead of don't or I'm. Okay, that's informal. Or they've. Okay, that's informal writing. So what else? So we don't use contractions, Allah, good. We don't use abbreviations, absolutely. Yeah, so Unisim says avoid slangs, idioms, certain expressions. So today's letter is formal, so we're focusing on formal. So avoid use of idioms, slang, certain expressions. Okay, avoid text language. So don't do things like, I know it's a popular one days, is like, in my arrogant opinion, I am AO. So don't use things like that, okay? Another one is, for example, do not use the word huge. I know a lot of students internationally really like this word huge for some reason. Huge is quite informal. We tend to not use the word huge in business or professional settings. Domingo says maybe use the third person, possibly, but I think, Domingo, you're thinking of an essay, a formal essay as opposed to a formal letter. Okay, in a formal letter, you still may use the second and first person, which means using I and you, but you have to use them more carefully, okay? So don't use the word huge. Avoid idioms as well, okay? Avoid slang, informal letters. What else? What else should we pay attention to? Okay, let's see if anybody else has... so using exact verbs instead of phrasal verbs is not a bad idea either, Pichu. Also, you want to use polite language. So instead of using language like this, instead of saying you can, you will. Okay, this is where your use of modals comes in. So in English, we use modal verbs to create polite language, like could you, may I ask you to, okay? Okay, especially if you are writing to a senior, like a boss, or in our example here where you're asking your coworker to do a favor for you. Obviously, you'd want to ask them in a very polite way. Okay, so you're using modal verbs, and you should be writing to the point. That's right, Onisim. Okay. So Hader's saying, what should I use instead of the word huge? You could use the word large or big. Okay. Those are much more formal words, large, big, great, instead of huge. Okay. All right. So there are a few points to pay attention to when you are constructing a formal letter. Okay. So stay polite, stay professional. Avoid emotional charge. Okay. So avoid speaking from feelings and emotions. Now that's getting a bit technical for IELTS, but generally speaking, that's true. For those of you who are businessmen, businesswomen, or plan to be in the future, professional letters, formal letters tend to avoid involving emotions. We have a goal or a situation, we need to achieve it, or we need to solve a problem. There's no room for emotion. So you don't write things like, I cried for 2 weeks. Okay? So careful with that. All right, so now we have a good idea of what to pay attention to, so we can construct some good sentences. Let's look at the question again. So we need to request a coworker to cover our shift at our job because of an unexpected emergency. What's my first step here? So I read this question, I remember what I need to pay attention to writing a formal letter. So I'm like, okay, don't write contractions, stay polite, avoid slang, use good quality words. I keep that in mind. What do I do now? What should I do next? So what is my next step? How do I write a good letter? Okay. A little bit of planning goes a long way to get a high IELTS band score. Okay, so what do I do next? If you're sitting there at the IELTS exam, you just read this task 1, what should you do before you begin writing? So Pachu says tone or topic paraphrase. Onisim says make a good introduction. Before you do, Domingo says, check the requested points of the letter. Yeah, Pachu says, well, think about the purpose of the letter. That's what I would say. Yeah, of course. So the topic here is an unexpected emergency. Okay. So your first step is to think about a good response to what is your emergency. All right. So step 1 is what is your emergency? Think of a simple but good answer. And remember, students, this is something I've noticed is a lot of students, they get one idea, they go, oh, somebody got injured or somebody's sick, and then they're like, that's my idea, and they just run with it, they go with it. Careful. It's not always true that your first idea is the best idea. It's better to come up with 2 or 3 different ideas and then think, okay, which one of these would be the easiest for me to write about? All right. So Asanka, this video will be available on the channel in a couple hours, and you will be able to come back and look at it. So don't worry, okay? It will be up for the next several weeks. All right. Onisim says, my car broke down. Okay, so think of so I'm just going to make this note here. Don't think your first idea is the only and best idea. Instead, think of 2 or 3 ideas and choose the one you believe will be easiest to write about. Okay, so number 1, car broke down. All right. What else? Having a baby. Sure. All right. What else? Pachu, not my wife got a delivery on Friday because that means she's getting a package from the postman. But rather you want to say my wife is due on Friday to deliver our child. Okay. Allah says my brother's wedding, but this is an emergency. Okay, this is an emergency. A wedding is not an emergency because you know that's happening and you have some advance notice. So a wedding would be a bad idea, Allah. You would start losing marks right away for not answering the question that's being asked. So you have to pay careful attention. Okay, relative had an accident. Okay, that's okay. That one's being suggested by Domingo. Domingo, you'd want to be a little bit more specific, right? So instead I would do something like, my father has fallen ill. Okay, so something that's a little bit more specific. It's okay to start general, but then you want to get more specific. Shanze says, contagious disease. I'm sick and I need to go to the doctor or the hospital. Sure. Okay, that works as well. So now we're getting a little bit of repetition in the ideas, but that's what you want to do. So you want to think of a few different ideas, and then you want to say, okay, which one of these is the easiest for me to write about? Okay. And then you choose. So which one? 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's take a vote. Let's see what the consensus is. So if everybody can just put a number into the chat, let's see what the majority of you agree on is probably the easiest and best choice to answer this part 1 question. So instead of me telling you, let's see what the majority of you choose. Okay, so 4 seems to be quite a popular answer. So far, 4 seems like the majority opinion. So I'm sick and I need to go to the hospital. Yeah, it's something that all of us tend to face fairly often in life. Okay, notice that most of you are choosing number 4. There's a very logical explanation for that. So me as a teacher or as a psychologist, right away I think, okay, why is 4 so popular? And I would agree that 4 is probably the best choice because it's the most common. Okay, so that's why it's probably the best choice. All right. And I agree. So therefore, it's a good choice. It's unexpected. It's a common emergency. We deal with it in our own language more often than having a baby or the car breaking down, hopefully. And probably your English will allow you to discuss this concept a little bit better than these concepts. This one's close, but this one's probably the best choice. I would have to agree, okay? So again, remember this very important tip, students, that you want to think of a couple different ideas before you choose the one that you approach, okay? That can make a big difference. That can be a 1 band difference. That can be a difference of band 5.5 versus 6.5. If you write a formal essay about having a baby and you don't know how native speakers use the word deliver or due date or maternity doctor, then you're going to be in trouble. But if you talk about being sick and needing to go to the hospital, you might have a much better vocabulary to explain that and get a 6.5. So just the planning can be that one band difference. So pay attention. Okay, the structure, so somebody's asking me, I shouldn't say somebody, Kyber's asking me, what's the structure of a formal letter? Kyber, the structure of a formal letter is very much the same for this task 1 as an informal letter, okay? So it has the same 3 parts that we've talked about before. Does everybody remember what the 3 parts of the letter are? For IELTS, okay? So if we go beyond IELTS, that can change. But for IELTS, it's the same. So it's the same, okay? So 3 parts to a formal letter, the same as informal, right? So you don't have to overcomplicate for the IELTS. In the real world, you do get into some more technical writing for business and so on, but you don't need to worry about that right now, okay? So Onisim says there needs to be an introduction, a body, and a conclusion. That's basically it. So very simply put, it's the introduction, body, and conclusion. And as some of you may notice from my voice, I'm also getting over a little bit of a cold. So ironically, today's class in some ways applies to me about catching a bit of the flu, but unfortunately there's nobody really to replace me at this moment for these live classes. Okay, in the introduction, you want to include 2 points. In your introduction, you want to include who you are, who's actually writing the letter. Okay, so introduction, present yourself, and purpose of the letter, right? All right, in the body is where you want to give details. Explanations and examples. I'm getting better, ladies and gents, don't worry. I get sick, but I'm quite fit these days, so I get over it fast. But thank you for your concern. So give details, explanations, and examples in the body paragraph, right? Stay clear, stay structured. We'll do this in one moment. And then conclusion, right? Strengthen your opinions, summarize your thoughts, and request communication. Okay, so that's what you want to do in the conclusion. If you want to think about it as sentences, the introduction is anywhere from 2 to 3 sentences. Okay, it depends on your literacy, on your writing fluency. So 2 to 3 sentences. The body can be anywhere from, let's say, 8 to 10 sentences or 6 to 10, depending on how complex your sentences are. And the end can be anywhere from 1 to 3 sentences, the conclusion, just to give you an idea of what is roughly the standard for such a letter, okay, for the IELTS. Okay, that gives you a good idea. So, those are the 3 parts. We're writing about needing to see the doctor. I'm sick, I need to go see the doctor. Okay, and we're paying attention to these parts of formal writing. So not putting in contractions, avoiding slang, and avoiding emotions, and just paying attention to polite language, okay? So once again, and it's a really good idea to read the question one more time real quick before you begin, okay? Just to make sure that you didn't miss something important. So again, it's a really good idea to just read it real quick before you begin. So you need to request a coworker to cover your shift at your job because of an unexpected emergency. In your letter, describe your situation, explain what they need to do in your absence, tell them what you can do in return, okay? So, begin your letter with dear. Okay, so here is dear. It doesn't give you more than that. So let's write the first part, the introduction, together. All right, students. Now, of course, we want to decide on the nature of our medical emergency, and we don't want to make it complex. Let's begin. Dear Mr. John. I could do it another way. I could show the examiner that I know very well what I'm doing. So, dear colleague. Okay? Colleague is a nice way to refer to your coworker. Now, give me the first sentence. I probably wouldn't start with, I came down with the flu. Instead, Onisim, it's better to start with who you are, okay? So introduce who you are. Just imagine for a second that this coworker might not be very familiar with who you are. So firstly, introduce yourself, all right? Don't start with, I have the flu. You might scare your coworker. Ah, who is this? They're looking around the office. I don't want to catch it. Okay, so instead of that, introduce yourself. We cannot use contractions in formal letters, Fitvi. Formal letters do not use contractions. So that's, I think you came in to the class a little bit late because I mentioned that at the beginning. But it's a good point to restate. So who are you? Write some sentences, students, for who you are. I'm going to do the same, and then we'll compare, okay? Aigul, you can make it up. Okay, be creative. So be creative where you work. The more details, the more creative you are, the better it will read and the higher your band score. So Aigul, your thinking is correct. Questions are good to ask from yourself before you put down the sentence. Where do I work? What is my job? What's my profession? Where is my office located? Or where is my desk located? That's what you see what I did. So who am I? What's my name? What's my connection to this colleague? Well, we work in the same department. My desk is in the south corner on our floor. So where am I located in this department? Okay, so that's exactly the right question, Aigul. So think of questions, think of answers, put the answers together. That's how you create your sentence. Clever. Okay, Onisim says, I'm your coworker, George, and I would really appreciate if you could replace my shift today. Okay, good, Onisim. So you're jumping a little bit more into it. You're going for the purpose right away with just a little bit of introduction, and that's fine. Okay, so you don't have to give a lot of description. Pachu says, I am Pachu, a coworker of yours, comma. So Pachu, it reads, I am Pachu, comma, space, a coworker of yours, comma, but I'm sorry to inform you that I could not come in to handle my shift due to a sudden fever. Pachu, no contraction, could not. Okay, could not. Ivan says, I am Ivan, the fire systems designer from Office 2, or from the second office. Ivan, that's a good start. So I know your specific position, I know your location, and I know who you are from a nice, concise sentence. That's great. Okay. Kyber says, Dear colleague, my name is Kyber, and I am one of your colleagues in the Walmart Bilal grocery store, Canada. Okay, Canada, Kyber, maybe too much information. They would probably assume at that point that you're in the same country. And one of your Walmart colleagues working in the same department as you, in the electronics department. Something like that, Kyber. Okay? Mia Mayar. Hi, Eugen. Mia Mayar says, my name is Mayar and I work in the same company as you. I'm working as a supervisor. Okay, good, Mia. Just make sure that you make the connection. Remember, this person will have to be able to substitute your position. Okay? Grace says, my name is Grace, your colleague in the same department, comma. My office is located on the ground floor. Okay, good. Grace, that's great. Very similar to what I have. Now I want to indicate my purpose. So I have my identity, and now I want to indicate purpose. So unfortunately, I came down with a terrible flu last night, and I will miss the next 3 days of work to recover and, of course, visit my doctor. Okay? As such, I would like to request that you cover my shift on these days. Okay? Or cover my responsibilities. Okay, notice how I'm avoiding the contractions. So I say I would like to. I don't say I'd like to. Okay. So I'm spelling and writing out every word as it should. Notice even the word will. This might be new for some of you. So the term going to also is used as a future participle. So I could say, and I am going to miss. But using the word will is more formal than saying am going to. Okay? So will is more formal than saying am going to. All right? Shanze says, I'm going to stay home today to make sure I do not spread the flu around the office. I will work as much as I'm able, but I'm asking you, Ali, if you could be my backup today just in case of any in-office responsibilities. That's how I would finish that one, Shanze. Just in case of any in-office responsibilities. And in-office would be in-office responsibilities. That's how I would write that, the end of that sentence, Shanze. Okay? Zaina says, my name is Zaina, and I'm writing to let you know that I have a bad flu and I cannot come to work for the next 3 days. It's good to be quantitative in formal letters, okay? So, again, we talked about these points in formal letters, but remember that in formal letters, you want to have clear communication. So, in formal letters, you must strive for clear communication, and this is often using quantitative language, which means numbers. Okay? So instead of saying I can't come in for the next few days, you should say I expect that I will stay home for the next 3 days or for the next week. Okay? It has to be something that we can measure, because if you write to me, I can't come in for the next few days, As your coworker, I'm going to think, okay, what are you asking me here, dear? Are you asking me to cover you for 2 days, 3 days, 5 days? So what's few? You need to be specific. Use a number. That's why you see that in my example, I said 3 days. If you're still feeling terrible after 3 days, you can write another letter and say, unfortunately, I'm still terribly ill. I need you to cover me for at least another 3-4 days. But you need to have clear communication, right? So I will miss the next 3 days of work. Okay, it's more formal. All right. Okay. All right. So far so good. So now we need to get into the body paragraph, students. So we go into the body paragraph. The body paragraph is where you give details. So explain in more detail what happened to you, okay? Explain in more detail what your responsibilities might be, okay? So that's what you want to do in this next part. Okay, so now you've introduced yourself. You've told them what the situation is, and now you want to go into more details. Okay, so let's get into the body paragraph. Pachu, what you're writing there, that is a good idea for the body paragraph. So give a little bit of a description of your emergency. So this person can empathize with you. They can realize that this is really an emergency and you're not just trying to get a few days off so you can go party with your friends, right? So currently, I'm stuck in bed with a 41-degree fever and a terrible cough. Last week, when I went to my friend's birthday event, I must have contracted the flu from an attendee. Okay, yeah, so I'm going into a little bit more detail so the person can really, say, oh, wow, this person's feeling terrible. I should really try to help them out, all right? Notice again what I'm doing here. So my point is really, students, to get you to that higher IELTS band score. So I really want you to get at least 7, hopefully even a higher score, okay? How do you do that? So aside from having the right structure and information, again, notice the quantitative information. So I'm using numbers. So this person knows how sick. So instead of just saying, I feel terribly sick, I say, I have a 41-degree fever, okay? So I'm stuck in bed with a 41-degree fever and a terrible cough. So quantitative information with qualitative information. Last week, starting my sentence with a time expression followed by a comma. When I went to my friend's birthday event, comma, I must have contracted the flu. If you have vocabulary, so use it. You could say caught. Okay? Caught the flu is a more simple way to say contracted. Okay? Contracted is a higher level vocabulary than caught. When you're writing this, if your first idea is to just write, I caught the flu, think a little bit. So think, hey, do I know another way to say caught the flu? And if you have the word contracted, then say, oh yeah, I remember, I learned the word contracted. I think that's a little bit more technical, so I'll use that instead. But make sure you know how to use it correctly, okay? So instead of using caught, you use contracted. And when you do that a few times, then you will bump up your score. Okay. The second example is what you're asking me here, Kyber. Okay. So uncanny fever, Jod, is slang. So you can't because it's a formal letter. So Jod's asking, can I use an uncanny fever? Uncanny would be awkward. That would be an informal expression, if anything. Okay. So here, I could have used the word someone, right? So I could have said this as, I must have caught the flu from someone. But I must have caught the flu from someone is a lower level of English than saying, I must have contracted the flu from an attendee. An attendee is a person who goes to the event. They are present at the event. Okay? Jod, you could use it in an informal letter, but it's still a little bit awkward. Definitely not in a formal letter. Okay? So when you're writing a formal letter, one of the big tips that you hear me saying again and again in a few different ways in this class is don't just go with your first idea. Okay? So if your first idea is caught, then think, hey, is there a better way? Oh yeah, contracted. So write down contracted. If your first idea is from someone, then, okay, maybe there's another better word than someone. Someone is not a very good word, okay? Attendee is better. If you don't know attendee, you might know the word acquaintance. Okay? Acquaintance is a better word than someone as well. All right, so look for that better word, okay? So two very important places where I told you to be careful about just going with your first thought. One is here with the actual idea that you choose for what to write. So instead, think about 2 or 3, choose the best one. And then here, when you're writing your formal letter and you are thinking about word choice, again, don't always go with your first thought, okay? You might have a better word. Just search your memory banks, all right? Okay, so now I'm continuing on. Let's continue on the letter. So let's see what you can follow up with here, students. So let's keep going, okay? Let's not lose track. So here we want to continue describing what we want to achieve with our letter. We want to explain the possible responsibilities that we need our coworker to cover, go into more details, okay? Okay, so I'm just writing along here. You don't have to write exactly what I'm writing. You can have your own ideas. I'm just showing you how I would continue the letter. Just keep going, okay? Just keep going, students. Use the advice that I'm telling you, okay? So Pachu says, I would therefore request you kindly to handle my shift as you know my job responsibilities. These include releasing an analysis report for the payment of the supplier, and you will find this on my desk. Okay, Pachu, careful not to write run-on sentences. So you have some good ideas there, Pachu, but you want to separate that into 2 sentences. You have 2 sentences there, not 1, okay? Grace has a question. If I use qualitative words, should there be a supporting amount or number? Yeah, Grace, that's definitely a good rule of thumb, that when you use qualitative language, then you support it with quantitative language, especially in a formal letter. Absolutely great. So if you say, I have a terrible fever, last I checked, it was 41 degrees, then that's your qualitative supported by quantitative. So definitely that's a good way. Okay, Shanze says, furthermore, I'm scheduled to give an employee training today at 3 p.m. I have asked the coordinator if we can reschedule it for next week, so no need to worry about this. However, so Shanze, you're giving information to the employee that they don't need to worry about. I don't think there's much value to that. Okay, if I'm the person you're writing to, I'd be like, well, why are you telling me? Just tell me what I need to do. Okay, so just focus on what I need to do rather than what I don't need to do. Okay, all right. Okay, so this is, oh, you have something previously there, Shanze, that I missed. Still though, Shanze, again, you don't really need to include anything that, okay, yeah, I see what you're writing there, Shanze. So you said, I do have an important call scheduled with a supplier. Please do me the favor of managing this meeting. Shanze, please do me the favor of managing this meeting. I will try to attend online throughout the day to guide you. Okay, that's good. All right, it's good. So you want more of that, Shanze. You want 2 or 3 of those. All right. All right. So this is what I have so far. Certainly, I do not want to spread this illness around the office, so I plan to stay at home until I recover and am past the contagious phase. Hey, good news, students. You're not going to catch my flu because we're separated by the digital realm, and thankfully, viruses have not figured out a way to transcend that yet, although digital viruses have. It is my humble request that you take care of a couple important in-office matters until my return. An important client, Mr. Smith, will be coming by the office today at 3 p.m. to drop off some contracts and pick up the software which I left for him on my desk. Could you please confirm this transaction and give him my sincere apologies for not being there to meet with him? Okay. So I'm just rolling along here, kind of going off of what some of you have said. Again, quantitative language, polite language, complex language, okay, very visual language, all right? So that's how we go. Yeah, now I see some nice polite language coming in from some students, Pachu namely. Good. Okay. All right, so we're doing quite well, and we have a pretty decent word count. What should I do at this point? So my body paragraph is coming along nicely. I have a good introduction, so here's my introduction. Here is my body paragraph. It's coming along well. I'm including some good points. What do I need to do? Ashrifa says, can I write yours faithfully? Not yet, Ashrifa. Yours faithfully is a little bit awkward. I think yours faithfully is much better for friends and family, especially someone you love, Ashritha. So I would not sign this one off as yours faithfully. What should I do at this point? What's a good idea, students? Kyber says conclusion, I think. You could go into the conclusion, Kyber. One point that I really emphasize is to check the question. Okay. So make sure you're not missing anything. Checking the question, students, in task 1, task 2 writing, and in speaking part 2 is a must, okay? Way too many students only look at task 1, task 2 writing questions one time and part 2 speaking questions one time, and then they never look at them again, and they forget to answer one or even more of the questions on the paper. So here, tell them what you can do in return, okay? I would probably include that in the body paragraph here. So there's still that question remaining. You could put this into the conclusion. I think it's acceptable, and there is a way to do it, no problem. You could finish off by saying, I will never forget this, and if in the future some situation happens where you need my help, then I will be there for you. So you could put that into the conclusion, but I would probably put that into the body paragraph. Okay? So I would probably do a little bit different for the conclusion. Okay. So here, let's add that in. Okay, so let's put that part in there. Okay. So I greatly appreciate your sympathy, and I will make certain to return the favor in the future should you require my assistance. All you need to do, you could do this as a comma, all you need to do is simply ask. Okay? So something like that. I mean, no, there is no letter in the academic IELTS. Okay, academic IELTS is different. We're going to do an academic IELTS task 1 in about 40 minutes on our Academic English Help YouTube channel. So we will do a tab, but that will be a members chat class, okay? But I will be doing a diagram task 1 for academic IELTS in about 40 minutes. All right, so I'm making sure that I include that I can return this favor. I greatly appreciate your sympathy, and I will make certain to return the favor in the future should you require my assistance. All you need to do is simply ask, okay? Now, I need to write a conclusion. So remember that my conclusion strengthens your opinion. So here we really need to say that there's just nothing I can do. I'm staying in bed. Summarize your thought and request communication. Here, your request for communication is very, very important. So this is how I would finish it off. Please do confirm that you are available to cover my responsibilities in my absence. Okay. I will do as much of the work remotely from my home as possible, and I will communicate what needs to be done over the course of the next 3 days. My deepest thanks. Adrian. Okay. So that's how I would sign that letter off. All right. So that's what my letter looks like completed. Yours should look somewhat similar. That's roughly 180 words, I would say, if I had to guess. I can do a word count here so we get a specific number. No, it's actually closer to 250, but that's okay. Remember, it's 150 words minimum. And in fact, I would say that if you're only writing 150 words for these letters, it's really hard to get a high score because it's very difficult to clearly include all the points in 150 words, okay? Shunze, thank you for understanding comma is also a very good way to sign off on this letter. Absolutely, okay? Yes, you can use sincerely, Jod. Sincerely is the safest way to sign off. It's not special. It's not going to help your score too much, but it's not going to bring your score down either, Jod, because you can use sincerely for just about any purpose, okay? Pachu, best regards is okay too, except in this context, it's a little bit strange, best regards, simply because you're feeling really bad. You have the flu, so it's a little bit awkward to say best regards. All right, students, so that's a formal letter in a nutshell. Again, remember the very valuable tips that I gave you today. In formal letters and for letter writing in general, don't always choose your first idea. It might be the best, but it might not be. Think of a couple different answers to the question and choose the one that is the easiest for you, okay? Doesn't mean write simple. It just means choose the easy idea so you can express yourself well. When you're writing, especially for the formal letter, don't always choose the first verb or the first noun that comes to mind. Think about your lexical resource. Think about your vocabulary. Is there a better word? Is there a word that can get you some more points for lexical resource? Okay, so think about that. All right. Keep these points in mind for the formal letter. Don't use contractions. Say do not instead of don't. Say I am or write I am instead of I'm. Okay? Use polite language. Avoid slangs and idioms. Don't use words like huge. Okay? Use quantitative language. Use numbers to back up your ideas. You need to communicate clearly to coworkers, your boss, businesses, and so on. Okay, students, definitely make sure to improve your writing. Go to our websites. We do have professional IELTS editors working to help you improve your band scores. You can check out the writing services as well as other fantastic materials at gieltshelp.com. That looks like this with the green background. Click that red button to join. You won't regret it. We basically have never really had students say, I've regretted joining and I didn't improve. I think all students unanimously agree that they get a lot from these websites. The academic one is here at aehelp.com. Click that big red button to join that one there. And in 30 minutes, I will do a task 1 for academic writing, a diagram on our Academic English Help channel. That's all one word like this, Academic English Help. That's it for me for today, for this week. I will be back on Wednesday to teach you some speaking part 2 and 3 strategies and examples to help you improve. Bye for now, everyone. Have an awesome rest of your weekend.